Are you a citizen of Lafayette Parish and you want to find out more about what's actually going on and what's coming down the pipeline from our leadership at the Lafayette Consolidated Government? We have the LCG Development and Planning Director, Mary Sliman, on the show today, and we went over everything from exciting developments from a new bike path and a new performing arts center, and even businesses like Top Golf, Dave & Buster's, and some long overdue improvements to our roadways. It was a great conversation about the betterment of our city, and I'm excited to jump right into it. Mary, thank you so much for being here today. We just had you talk to our whole team. It was super informative. So glad to see you. I mean, we go way back with the Realtor Association. So I'm going to start.
And we're related.
Yeah, we are. So we're cousins, actually. So are we second cousins? Second cousins, yeah. So, no, really, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with us today. And I really am looking forward to this because, you really are the key to all the development that's happening in Lafayette. I mean, everything's coming through you. I know you have a huge team and everybody does a great job, but super excited to hear what you have to say. And why don't we just start off with tell us how you got to where you are now, and then we'll talk about where you're at.
Okay. So obviously I worked for the Realtor Association for almost 11 years. I was MLS director when I left. And then
it was painful when you left. We
apologies.
Sorry, but we made it through it, but it was a very sad day for the Realtor Association.
Yeah. Well, and as I mentioned earlier too, I got the call the day that the world shut down, March 13th, right? And so it was a very interesting transition, leaving the Realtor Association during the pandemic, starting a new job during the pandemic, and learning, all the people, all the processes, just working for government period is very different from the private sector. So
sure,
that was certainly a change and done during the pandemic. But here I am almost 3 years later, and now we're comfortable, we're ready to go. Have my hands in a lot of fun stuff.
It's hard to believe it's been 3 years, but
no, right?
Yeah, I mean it seems like yesterday, but I mean I know so much has happened since you started this new position.
Yeah, and it was a whirlwind at first, but now, probably in the last 12 months, I really feel like, my feet are in deep. I've got a lot of projects that I'm working on, with my position and also with my staff. And so, it's been really fun. And community development and planning overlaps so many departments within Lafayette Consolidated Government. So there is so much working with public works, working with traffic roads and bridges, working with drainage, PD, fire department, so it's a great position for me to be in because I get to work with a lot of great people.
Yeah, and so I mean, you came in 2020, in March of 2020, and I mean, you went right into it. I mean, we started changing the UDC. We had those public outreach meetings with all the developers. I mean, from downtown development all the way just the committees that we had, and then y'all revamped the UDC.
We did. That was the big thing, right? Jump in and learn how to swim. Was the mayor president felt very passionate about repealing and replacing the UDC. So, Danielle Bro had already started the process, so we picked up where she left off. We did the public meetings in a pandemic in big gyms, 6 feet apart. And we managed to get that public feedback, and we actually brought it to the councils in December of 2020. It was adopted, and so we put it in place at the beginning of 2021. And, it was a great process for me and a really good learning opportunity because I got to intimately understand the regulations, the things that maybe gave the contractors or the realtors or just, people in the public heartburn was having to deal with. And so we were able to put in some changes to effect and to make sure that Lafayette was pro-development and that was easy to develop, and that we put mechanisms in place to make sure that, ahead of time what you're getting into before you come in and apply with our office.
Well, and, I was part of that process, and it was interesting because, being in real estate and dealing with developers and builders, we talked about this earlier, before we changed it, we had lots of gripes, lots of complaints, it's so difficult to get through a project and to talk to the right people. And then you go halfway and then you find out something you should have known before. And it it was awesome to see how y'all literally reached out to these guys and said, look, tell us what you want us to change.
Yeah.
And, some of it was just griping just because it's difficult to do business, period. I mean, nothing is easy. But y'all really did listen to all the feedback, and then you put a structure in place to actually help the developers get through that process. I mean, I was part of some of those conversations where, we did have challenges that we should have known before we got, further down the road, whether it was utilities or, an easement or whatever else. But I think it's really cool that you guys put in place a liaison to actually help a developer or, get through that process, right?
Right. Yeah. So Ann Famoso used to be our development manager when I first started, and actually took the position as the development liaison. And so not only did we make the changes in the LDC to make it more pro-development, but we also put in the staff person to help kind of guide people through the process.
I think that was the biggest complaint.
Yeah, it was just confusing and people didn't know where to go. And so
Ann is one of the smartest persons I've met, as far as when it comes to development and knowing that code and understanding what.
Absolutely. I mean, I still rely on her to this day. So
yeah, I mean, what a great talent y'all had in house, and y'all just moved her to the liaison, and now she was a staff member on,
from our office,
coming from your office, so she knew the process and she knew the pain points. I remember having conversations. She said, "Yeah, this is a pain point. We got to fix it." And now that she's the liaison, how is that going?
It's great. I mean, it helps me, for one, because it takes that workload off of this position, the director's position, and people are able to get a more one-on-one, experience in working through all of the processes, instead of me just, trying to get it in with all the other stuff that I have going on. So it's been huge for her to be able to, shepherd people through the process, and that be what she focuses on, right?
And get the people to get a meeting with the right person in the government.
Absolutely. Make those connections and get the people at the table who need to be at the table. And it's for the big things and the little things, right? So like, the big prospects that Lita's working on, she facilitates meetings, people that just come through straight to community development and planning who need the assistance, and is able to help through. So yeah, she's a huge asset for us at LCG, period. And certainly for me, when it comes to development and, how do we get people through the process so it's the least painful as possible.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's what we wanted. I mean, that's what the developers wanted. So, I mean, to be able to honestly listen to the complaints and the gripes of all the builders, developers, and realtors, it was interesting to see how that process really, I think it worked. Now, I don't know if she's overwhelmed or if she's able to handle everything, or is there going to be another liaison that comes on?
No, I think she's good. And the nice thing now, too, is that Neil LaBeouf, who is our new development manager, he's been in place for a couple years now. And so he's able to take the minor, properties and projects and work them through, and handles the bigger, more sensitive ones, probably, I would say. And then, the addition of our pre-development meetings and really pushing those, we had that prior to, when I started, but it wasn't very, they weren't very often, right? And kind of on an as-needed basis. But with the LDC, that was one of the things that we said, although it's not written down in the book, it is a service that we are offering. So if you have a piece of property and what your idea is, or even if you have a site plan, that'll help us out even more. Reach out to Neil at our staff and ask for the pre-development meeting. We'll bring you in. We'll put all the players at the table. So LUS, Public Works, traffic, they'll all be there so you can better understand what lies ahead. And then you can, decide from there whether or not that's the right property for you or that's the right project, right? So that's been a huge help for us because we're kind of giving you all that information up front instead of having to work you through problems later on.
No doubt. I mean, I use them all the time. Like when we have a seller or owner of a piece of property, I mean, we start usually with a planner. And I encourage all of, our team, but also the owners of the properties, like, hey, go sit down with the planner, say like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Or if you're buying a piece of property, start there. Make sure that there's no, red flags or anything that could stop you. And then if Neil is more than more than happy to meet with anybody to talk to them about a piece of property. I mean, we're dealing with a piece of property recently that we have under contract, and he sat down with us and he's helping us through the process to figure out, okay, what are the issues? Because as we talked about earlier, it's an unplatted piece, but it's in Old Lafayette. It's been there forever, just never platted. So like we've got some work to do on our end, but just knowing that pathway is very helpful.
Right.
But let's talk about, so you came into Albany. Let's talk about the other parts of your job, because you're dealing with zoning. You're also handling permits. Go over what's the job description?
Yeah, so I have 7 different divisions. Most of them involve the development, the platting, the rezonings, the building codes. We also have Sally and her staff with our alcohol and noise control. They're making sure people have alcohol permits that are supposed to, and that they're following all the rules to keep those permits. And the same thing with noise complaints and, sound variances when needed. And then we have our permitting staff, which, any permit you're coming to get, whether it's a certificate of occupancy or a building permit, that's all coming through John Broyles and his staff. And that's really the gateway into the development of your property, and so they're almost the face of our development and planning side of community development and planning. And then we also have our community development staff, which is 2 divisions, with our grants administration and our housing human services department. So, which
is really interesting. You were telling our team today, I mean, you've got money to give for first-time home buyers and
so we have loan programs, we have first-time home buyer program, we have demolition programs, we have housing rehab programs, all of it, using our federal dollars. And so I want real estate professionals to learn as much as they can about those, because you never know when you're going to have a property owner or a potential buyer who could take advantage of those programs.
Yeah, so I saw y'all have demolition programs. Like if you have a house that needs to be demolished, there's some grant programs for that, right?
Correct.
There's rehabilitation. I even saw, some people that need help with painting or anything else. You've got those grants.
Right.
And if you don't use that money, you were telling me you guys have to give it away to other charities anyway.
Right. It has to be spent. So at the end of the year, we see what our fund balance is, and then we work and we go through an application process to make sure we're giving those out to generally housing related type nonprofits.
And where do they get that information? Besides, I know if you can find a realtor that knows, like we have all that intel now, there's also courses that you have to take in order to qualify.
Through our housing counseling program, correct. So the best place is to go visit the Taylor Center. It's over there by the municipal golf course. Or you can always look, they do have a Facebook page, and we share a lot of the same things on our LCG Facebook page as well. It's called the Taylor Center. And then, just giving them a call. 337-291-8447 is Belle LeBlanc. She's our manager there. And she can tell you about the programs. She can send you to the person to talk about a specific program, applications and how to get into those and utilize those different programs, whether it's housing rehab or loans or housing counseling. Absolutely take advantage of it. Learn about them if you're a real estate professional, so that you can send your clients there or use them for yourself.
No, I mean, it's, I know that our clients have been able to take advantage of that, which they literally would not have been able to get into a house without these programs. So, I mean, it's great that we have that, and we need to get it out there more, because it's probably underutilized.
I agree. And we're trying to grow those programs and make sure that we maximize our spending, within LCG as much as possible. And then, of course, we're always looking for volunteers to help with those entities who actually, get the rest of that fund balance, those dollars, right? So either volunteering with Rebuilding Together or Catholic Charities or Habitat or, whatever nonprofit it may be that year that is awarded funding.
That's really cool. Let's talk about, before we move on, since we're talking about UDC and coding and everything, right now the state has made some adjustments to a lot of their codes, I guess, and y'all are actually hosting CE classes for developers or builders and electricians, and to try to help them get up to speed with the new statewide.
Yeah, so as of January 1st, we are now under the 2021 codes, building codes, and that,
And that's statewide. That's not just Lafayette Parish.
Correct. We follow the state. So whatever the state legislature decides, that's what we also follow.
I want to clarify that because you hear people say, "Oh, well, Lafayette's got their codes are too tough or whatever," but that's a statewide.
Correct. We follow the state. So whatever the building code adopted at the state level is the building code locally.
Yeah.
And so Bruce is working on a class tomorrow on Wednesday, and they're going to actually, he's going to teach as much as he can. It's an all-day thing, and they've divided into the different trades so that everyone in town can understand what the new building codes are, how they're going to design to them, how they're going to do inspections to ensure that work is within the new codes.
Yeah.
And we'll see. It's a great resource, and I'm very grateful that we have somebody in town with Bruce who's able to teach those classes, right? And that we don't all have to drive to Baton Rouge or Shreveport or someplace else to get that education. So kudos to Bruce for doing that. Bruce is very well respected in the state, I will say, and he serves actually on a regional committee as well. So we have a really great building official here in Lafayette.
Well, let's move into some fun stuff, because this is what I really dig, and especially for your position, you get to see this, and you get to see the progress that not many people get to see, and unless you're in it like you are, and if you're moving to Lafayette or if you're living in Lafayette and you want to know what the plan is, I mean, we've got some amazing things happening right now, with the bike paths and the parks and even the throughway, what's happening. So let's start off with bike paths. Tell us, this is a very ambitious program that Lafayette's taken on.
Absolutely. So Bikes of Lafayette is our bike plan. We actually finished it earlier last year. We did some public comment portions in July. We had over 1,500 people respond, which is huge. It's the largest response I think LCG's ever had on any type of public comment. So we were...
So obviously people in Lafayette care about biking.
Yes, absolutely. And so we got great feedback. The plan has been adopted by the Planning Commission. So that is the big deal for us when we start applying for grants to actually, continue building the bike paths. And so, we're gonna use the dollars that we've already have allocated. The mayor president gave $10 million over 5 years to our efforts. And so we're starting that. Actually, we've already started it. If you drive down St. Mary and Girard Park Drive, you'll see the new trail from along Girard Park that goes actually up Lewis. So that's the first one we broke ground on. And then the second one is going to be our Muncus to Girard. We call it phase 1. And it's going to start at the West Bayou side, the back side of Muncus Park. And it's going to come down what we call the Panhandle along the coulee.
Which I found interesting how that was kind of swept under the rug, that portion of Muncus Park. Nobody wanted to talk about it. I know there was some landowners and stuff that were not so hype on the idea of having a bike trail right there, but we finally got it through. I mean, it's such a great access from Johnson Street to West Bayou. You've got Rotary Point.
Yeah, it's huge. And so, the first real task that we have is the green loop. It's called the Bay Loop, and it basically is the connecting all the neighborhoods in Lafayette. I say all, most of them, from Muncus Park all the way to Pontiac Point, right? So, and then back. So we want you to be able to, take that loop and really get anywhere from, you can get to UL, you can get, to both sides of UL, right? From the main campus to the athletic campus. So, so this was our first venture into getting the first portion of the Bay Loop started.
So so you're going to come down, is the trail going to be like the one they have at UL, with all those lights, or is it going to be?
So for the Muncus to, I'm going to say Hyman Memorial, because that's the first phase. It is going to be a little bit of both, actually.
If you don't know where Hyman Memorial is, that is right next to Lafayette General.
Correct, right by their new parking garage.
That's correct, yeah.
So, so it'll, you'll kind of get an off-road feel coming, from Muncus down the Panhandle.
So it's going to be dirt or?
Oh, no, it's going to be asphalt.
Asphalt, okay.
So it'll be like a real, real path. And then we'll make sure you cross West Bayou safely.
So it's going to come down, and then you're going to have a crosswalk across West Bayou, and then into Rotary Point.
Right. You'll cross the bridge into Rotary. And then we're going to take you in the woods.
Which I love.
Yeah.
Like, because y'all, I've seen a lot of work, too, in that area. I don't know if it's a Rotary Club.
They did do some work there, yeah.
So it's going to go into Rotary Point where the boat landing is, and then kind of through the woods where they have the sewer plant right there, and then to South College.
Correct. Cool. And then, so that'll be the first phase, and then we're going to start working on the second phase as soon as we break ground on the first phase. We'll start getting you from Hyman Memorial to Girard Park. But
is it just going to be on the road? Like on that's
Girard Park Drive. Yes and no. So we don't have an exact path there yet, but we're going to maybe venture through some of Ochsner's property. Obviously the desire is to not have you on the road if possible. But we recognize that when we look at the bicycle plan in totality, a lot of it will be on roadway or on the side of the roadway, in a nice big sidewalk feel, if you will, just because our infrastructure, it's easier for us and we don't have a lot of wooded areas in the middle of town.
And so it's called the Green Loop?
It's green. It's called the V Loop.
The V Loop, okay.
Yeah.
It's green. It's going to be green on the map, but it's the V Loop. And
yeah.
Why the V Loop? What's V Loop?
V is a bicycle.
Oh, okay. In French. Okay.
Yeah, vélo.
All right. And so is it going to be a loop? So you get all the way down to Pontiac Point, which is on the other side of the thruway, and then is it coming back?
It will work to come back, like around Congress. And so as we do road projects, we want to integrate, bike and ped facilities as much as we can, right? So that is one of the things that, as we look at, like, for instance, this Congress Street streetscape that we discussed earlier from University to the thruway, right? There'll be a huge bike and ped either path, or we'll have some protected bike lanes on the roadway to make sure that you can bike or walk safely, right? So, and that is part of the V Loop. So we will, it may not be its own bike project, but the bike and ped concept will be integrated into all of our street projects moving forward to ensure that not only are we looking at cars getting around safely, but also walkers and bikers.
So what is the timeline? So y'all are starting to do that first step, which is the Munkes Park Panhandle that goes down to West Bayou. Is that happening now, or?
Yeah, so we're almost at final plans, and we hope to go to bid around March, which will put us moving dirt in the summertime.
Uh-huh.
So, the mayor, this is a passion project of the mayor president, and so, he wants to get it done as quickly as possible, which I agree. We've been working on this for a long time, so it's going to be nice to see some dirt moving and some things happening for people.
No, I mean, it's really just makes lifestyle in Lafayette better. I mean, to be able to jump on your bike and not feel like you're going to get nailed by a car.
Yeah, we're not doing Johnson Street. It's going to be much safer.
So we've got the bike path, which I'm very excited about, and I think Lafayette, they should be, they're going to be really enjoying that once that hits.
Yeah.
Now, we've also got the Moore Park and Brown Park project that's happening.
Right. So Moore Park's going to turn into a super soccer complex, so we can host tournaments and regional and maybe national, but I don't know. We may have to settle for regional, but that's okay. The idea is it's going to be a very nice soccer facility. And then we're also working in Brown Park to make a complementary park to St. Julian and to Youngsville's park. Yeah. So, I mean, think how great it would be. Oh, yeah. We're going to have, 2 pods, 8 fields. We'll have a championship field. It's going to be premier. We're going to have a couple ponds. We're going to keep the walking path so that the neighbors, can still utilize the walking path. It's going to be top notch. And, a lot of people talk about, well, we have that in Broussard, we have that in Youngsville. Well, we want it in Lafayette too, but we don't look at it as a competition to Broussard or Youngsville, but more of a compliment, right? Yeah. Like, how awesome would it be to have a huge tournament come in with 3, they can have 3 locations going at one time, Yeah. So, so we're going to do Brown Park, and we've got the contractor on board, and we're diligently working, through getting all of our cost estimates and finalizing the design so that we can start moving dirt soon too.
That's really cool. So, like, that's going to happen in the next 5 years, or?
I would say it's going to be before that.
Really?
Mhm.
Wow. That's going to be amazing. Well, let's talk about, so in that same area, we've got, I've heard that we've been approved and we have the money for university from I-10.
To Cameron.
It's going to stop at Cameron?
Yeah.
Okay.
So originally, we already had an MPO project to do some intersection improvements at Cameron. In 2019, we applied for a build grant. It's a federal grant, and the original ask was like $28 million, if I'm not mistaken. They did call us and ask us if we would take 10, which of course we said yes. We weren't going to say no. So we scaled back a little bit on the project, but we are still going to do a really nice roadway improvement. There'll be a raised median. There'll be, left turn lanes. There's absolutely going to be bike and pedestrian walkways and bikeways, so that the people who have to walk along University can get to and from places safely. So in essence, today, what is that turn lane in the middle will be going away, and we'll put trees. I mean, it's just going to be beautiful, right? You'll get off of I-10, and then you'll come straight through a nice new looking university.
Do they plan on going? Because I mean, originally I think it was to get all the way down.
It was all the way to I-10, and I mean, let's not forget on the north side of I-10.
UL, it was originally, or is it?
No, it always stopped at Cameron, but we did have the limits going up to and making some improvements at I-10, the intersection itself. But with what we call it the haircut, we took that out just because
somebody hit the bridge right there.
Yeah, that's an I-49. But yeah, so DOTD's been making some improvements. But we also have another project north of I-10 at Renault. They're putting in a roundabout at
really?
Renault.
I know that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of work happening there. And one thing that we didn't talk about earlier was North St. Antoine. So that's going to go from it. Currently, we have North St. Antoine, and it goes underneath the overpass, or underneath I-10, sorry. And then it kind of jogs right and turns into Acadian Hills Lane, I think. But the future North St. Antoine is just going to go straight all the way to Ponte Mouton.
Okay.
So that will open up, and create opportunities for economic development along that roadway, and it'll be a great connection. It'll certainly help LCA, because
is that going to be mostly like, I would imagine, industrial type or all types?
We haven't really thought that for, but I'm going to tell you from a zoning perspective, we probably don't want it to be industrial. We want it to be more neighborhood friendly and retail or restaurants or, something less intense.
Yeah.
But I mean, who knows? We'll see.
Awesome. So we've got the parks, we've got the bike pass, we're working on University from I-10 to Cameron, and then of course I know you know a lot. You're probably the only person that knows the most about the I-49 corridor. Where are we at with that, the throughway and the elevated portions, and what's?
Yeah, so we're
gonna have that in our lifetime?
Yes, I'm going to tell you yes. I might end up being a liar when it's all said and done with, but my hope and prayer is that yes, that you and I will be driving on it. I mean, it is going to be a huge build. It's going to take almost a decade to complete once it gets started. But I do see that there is positive movement as far as, from the state legislature, from our leadership of the state, certainly locally. Our mayor president is very passionate about it. And so we are doing as much as we can to make sure that, we get funding as quickly as possible. As I mentioned earlier, it does start with a B. So we're talking about billions, not just millions, which is, really overwhelming if you think about it. But we want to make sure we get and secure that funding. Actually, in 2020, when I started, we were meeting with DOTD almost on a quarterly basis and talking about design. We were talking about the path. We were talking about, all the intricacies down to, what do the benches and the trash cans look like, right? So a lot of those decisions are, we've talked about, we've vetted, we've got public comment on, they've had a couple public meetings. They're getting really close to what they call the record of decision. And once they have the ROD, then really it is about funding. And once the funding's secured, they'll get started. I have heard, and I don't know because I don't work in that department, but that there's going to actually be some movement maybe this year on the Willow side. And there's certainly some movement at Verot in the thruway. So we'll see some things happening.
We're going to see activity at Verot and 90. They're going to do some type of interchange there. And then on the Willow and I-49.
Willow and I-49, yeah. So
like this year, like 2023, or is that going to be?
I'm hearing that, the governor would like to see something started before, he's no longer in office. So I think it would be great, even if they make improvements to the existing Willow Willow and Evangel Thruway. I mean, it's really a nightmare for pedestrians.
I mean, just the whole thing is no good.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like Danielle and I, we do a lot of RV and we go all around the world, and we know we're back in Lafayette when we start shaking.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the worst road in America, that corridor. And I guess they don't want to spend money on it because we're about to redo it.
Yes. And so, we're kind of getting to the point where we need to see either you need to fix the road or we need to get some movement on the connector. So
exciting, man. I mean, 20 years ago when I first came to Lafayette, I must have been 2006. I came in 2004. I was on like the community throughway outreach.
Yeah, they did do a
big push for years. We were doing it, and so like it was really like, I don't know, is this ever going to happen? But it seems like we've gotten more movement on all of this stuff. I mean, we've been talking about bike paths. I mean, Scott Chilling had been trying to propose bike paths for the last 20 years. So like, I mean, it's just cool to see and hear from you that things are actually in the works.
And we do work with Scott on some of our stuff. So our planner who does all of our bike and ped, Nick Hernandez, has been in. I've been in a couple meetings with Scott. So
yeah, I mean, he's passionate
in the loop about what we got going on.
Well, it's good to see that's happening, and now we've got to attract people, right? So because we're becoming more of a hub. I know like people from Alexandria to Franklin, all the way to Lake Charles, they're really coming here to entertainment. Enjoying like the shows and Downtown Alive and all the festivals and everything. And I know that we have some really cool facilities coming to Lafayette. You've talked about Top Golf and Dave & Buster's. What's going on with that?
So they're in our office through permitting, and so
that's happening. You can talk about it, and they're.
I can talk about it to the point that I can't tell you if they're building, but I can tell you that they've applied to build. So.
That's public.
I'm pretty safe. It's pretty safe that at this point, if they wouldn't be applying for a permit if they weren't intent on coming to Lafayette. So,
which is awesome because, I know people from Lafayette, they go to Baton Rouge to go to Top Golf. And so to have that, we can bring people from Homa, from Lake Charles. And now
absolutely, it's going to be a game changer.
I wish it was downtown, but that's another discussion. And so Top Golf and Dave Buster's are going to be somewhere off of the Ambassador College Saloon corridor area.
Yeah, they'll be in Ambassador Town Center by Costco. And
then let's talk about performing arts. I know a lot of people, there's a lot of buzz going around right now about where that's going. And, we talked earlier, there was a study done and they had identified the space by the Cajun Dome and the Convention Center on UL property, but that was scrapped, right? Like, tell me, what was that process and why did it get changed and where are we going now?
Well, a lot of it is really political, but I'll be honest, I think that the way we're going about it now is a good direction. So we did have the study from LEDA. It did take 7 sites and it recommended the one by UL. I can't speak to whether or not it was a good study or a bad study. I just know where we are today, and that is that the mayor president said, well, let's do an RFP and we'll get some requests for proposals. We'll allow property owners throughout the city and parish to bring their properties to us, and we'll look at all the different proposals. There's a rank or a grading scale or schedule, if you will, and it tells you, how many points you get for the various aspects, what we're looking for. And so the proposal committee the scoring committee will take all the proposals, they'll read them over, they'll discuss them, and then they'll grade them according to the points, and whoever gets the most points, that's the property, that's the winner, right? I think it's great.
So who grades it?
So the scoring committee is going to be made up of at least one representative from each council member, or the council member themselves, but they can't all 5 participate.
So most likely the council members are going to appoint somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I think there'll probably be a couple council members that are actually on it, but we can't have more than two. So the other three will be able to appoint a designee. So we'll have representation from each of the 5 districts, and then we will have. I'm sure there'll be some people from the administration, that are part of the scoring committee. That's not uncommon for us, and that committee will be the ones who review all the proposals, whether it's a lease, whether it's a purchase, or some other, offer. I don't know. People could get creative. But anybody who has, 3 to 6 acres that think would be suitable, we'll look at things like infrastructure. We'll look at obviously the cost. All those things will factor into that scoring.
So, the first study is really not even going to be part of the decision at all.
I mean, I think we may use it for ancillary information, but it won't be part of the scoring, if you will, because the scoring is strictly based on the proposals in front of us.
And I told you that's what I've heard, just rumors, like allegedly that, some of the scoring from that first study may not have been validated or for whatever reason. But that's awesome, though, that they're actually going to do that. Now, what's the timeline on something like that?
Yeah, so we actually have a pre-proposal conference meeting tomorrow, which is for anyone who's interested in submitting a proposal to come ask questions.
And when's the deadline for the proposal?
And then the proposals have to be submitted by the 22nd of February.
22nd of February. So if you've got 4 acres, 2 to 4 acres, you got until
February 22nd.
February 22nd to get your proposal in.
Yep. And look, this is a public process. It's open to everyone. We've done a really good job of making sure everyone in the real estate community knew that they had the opportunity, or if they had a client who may meet all of the criteria to submit a proposal. And, we've also included the university. We've included downtown stakeholders. So the word is out there, and I've seen some articles and, things written about the RFP being out. So I feel like it's good for the public process and for everyone to feel like, we did a good job of making sure we didn't just pick sites. And I say we, talking about the administration or LCG as a whole, we didn't just pick a place, that we opened it up and let the public bring us what you got, right? And so we'll see what kind of proposals we'll get. We'll go from there.
And so once you get the proposals, the site will eventually be chosen, and then they'll start building that. And then once that's built, then they're going to tear down then y'all are going to sell the Hyman Center.
Yeah. So after we have the site and the potential, we do the RFQ, request for qualifications for the developer of the Performing Arts Center. Then we'll have those big conversations about funding and about what do we do with the existing Hyman and what do those timelines look like. The mayor president has said that we won't do anything with the Hyman until we have something to replace it, right? So,
which I think is important, because I was even talking to somebody. We went to we were at the Hyman the other day, actually this weekend, for a tackle ball, and somebody was like, well, this might be the last time we're going to be here, but it's probably going to be a few years before.
Oh, yeah. I don't see anything happening until we have someplace else to go.
Yeah. And then so does Lafayette General or Ochsner's have like an option to buy that already?
I really don't know the answer to that. That would have all been handled by legal, but,
That's got to be the buyer.
They're growing, and so, obviously they would buy that property, but
to them than anybody else, I would imagine.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, man, that's really amazing stuff. One thing that we didn't talk about in our team meeting was, drainage. It seems like, and knock on wood, but it seems like I know y'all been working on drainage. I know y'all been working on it downtown. I have a house downtown, and it seems to be working. Like, what's the feedback on that? Or is it just we haven't had big rain? I don't know.
Well, so yeah, we were actually talking about that yesterday in our directors meeting, because, we've got 3 years in now in a lot of work that the mayor president and public works department has been doing, since he started, right? I mean, hit the ground running with drainage, right?
Right.
And so we've got facilities in place now. So, we were talking about, there was a ton of rain this weekend, right? And so, it's like, did anybody hear anything? Did we talk about the number of calls? We only got, I think it was like 6 calls or 8 calls or something, which is,
that's awesome.
It used to be hundreds, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things we giggled about is that nobody called and said, hey, it worked, but nobody called to complain either. So we'll take the win on having the
So it seems like it's it's definitely made an impact.
Yes.
What have y'all done? I know, like downtown, y'all cleaned out a lot of the drain. What else have you done? Why?
Well, and we did subsurface on the triangle,
Okay.
right? And
So
so,
that's already done and installed.
yep,
So
that's all done.
Water's going. It's not
It's being held underground, basically.
So Pops isn't flooding anymore.
Well, it won't make the
Yeah.
statement that they'll never flood, but hopefully what they did was sufficient. And, we'll see. I didn't hear anything about this weekend, but
The subsurface drainage in downtown.
yeah, you got the pond at Meadowbrook, right next to the Middlebrook, next to the school. There's a pond on Lake Farm in the back of the baseball fields for CSA at Como Rec Center in Beaulieu Park. And then we've got Homewood, which is in the unincorporated parish, and they've done a lot of other little smaller, projects that maybe, help a neighborhood or a few neighborhoods. And so they're not big and giant,
Right.
but it's all the little things and the big things finally coming together now where we can see, when we had like the rain in May of 2021, right? That was a big deal. That was a quick flash flood, and kind of everybody got a little bit nervous. But then you see the rain from this weekend, and we see how our ponds worked. We talked about how were the neighborhoods that were impacted previously in a big rain like that. And
Now all of
it's
those like pond projects that y'all started, are they complete, or some of them were like held up in litigation or something?
yeah, so there is some litigation
right now.
but they are online. Even though I don't want to say even the ones in litigation, but I think that even the ones in litigation are. Don't hold me to that, but
So they're all working. So because we had Miss Cornet come in, and she
oh yes,
she gave us an overview.
Stephanie.
Yeah. So Stephanie came in and she said, it's really made for like overflow. So when the river gets to a certain height, and then it goes into these ponds to reduce it from flooding.
So they'll all function differently. And so she's probably like, some of them will take the overflow, some of them will take what would have been in neighborhoods, right?
Like retention ponds.
Yeah.
So it slows it down.
And then we meter it out over time. So they will all function differently, but
it's all a network.
some
It's all working together.
that's right. That is the ultimate goal, is that, they have a role in a bigger picture, and it's not just, like a development's retention pond, which is supposed to hold their own water, right? Like it's all part of a big, large drainage plan.
Well, I mean, just from the real estate side, that conversation is happening every day on the flooding side, and to know that you guys went out and actually did something about it was, really, good to hear.
Yeah, and I'll tell you too, like in 2017, they made some drastic changes to the drainage regulations for residential development, and that's not something that we talk about or that we hear a lot, but those are working. Like we're seeing now that those first developments that were built in 2018 and 2019, that those were like zero net fill and the 15% reduction, like those are actually working. So people come in a lot in the parish and they're like, oh my gosh, they're going to put in these homes and they're going to flood my house, and we talk about it and we're like, and then now we can say, no, look how it worked in this neighborhood and how much better it's made the surrounding properties, because really truly that's what we're looking out for now with our development regulations, is to protect the neighbors and to make sure that the neighborhood next to you or the couple houses next to you don't impact you in a negative way, and especially in terms of water.
Yeah, I mean, just dealing with that, with homeowners, and you never want to say, well, okay, well, your house is never going to flood again, but we can absolutely say, we use 2016 as like a, hey, did it flood in 2016? It hasn't flooded since. And, there has been houses that have flooded multiple times in certain areas, but it seems like, especially in the last couple of years, it just I don't have the data, but it definitely seems like we're not getting as many flooded houses, and we're not dealing with that
good.
more often.
Well, and it goes back to, we don't always get the praise, but we don't get the complaints. So we'll take...
That is the praise.
We'll take
complaints isn't...
Right.
Right? So it's going to be interesting. The further you get away from 2016, the less the impact on the value of your houses and everything else. So it'll be interesting to see how the next, decade goes. But it seems like we're making an impact, and we're fixing things that, I heard and this could be a rumor, but a few years ago, some people said they never even really surveyed the ditches. That they don't even know. And I know just from being in all the different neighborhoods that the ditches were completely stopped up.
Yeah. That's been another big effort of our drainage department is get the ditches done.
Big, man. I mean, like you go into an area and you got open ditches, but there's no ditch. There's like a ditch and then it's stopped up between driveways, and it's like, well, how is that going to drain? You know? So, I mean, I think the administration has done a phenomenal job on at least addressing the issues the best that they can. You can't really ask for anything more than that. So, with that though, I mean, I want to know, like, you started this job in March 2020. What is the craziest things that you've seen or you're most excited about for Lafayette?
Well, I'll tell you, it's so fun to be on this side and to see like the things that are talked about coming, the work that LEAD is doing in recruiting new businesses. I don't know. For me, and I mentioned this earlier, for me, sometimes it's not the buildings, right? For me, it's about making the city pretty and beautifying it and the quality of life, right? How fun is it going to be able to ride your bike anywhere in town or to go and do the baseball tournaments at Brown Park or, like just some things little as the Congress Street streetscape, right? We restriped Congress from University to the Thruway, and now we're going to, make that permanent and make it beautiful. And, I think that's the thing I think about with other cities is like you drive through and you're like, gosh, this is a beautiful town, right? I want people to think about that in Lafayette, right? I don't want you to think about what you have to drive through to get to the university or, from the airport to some part of town, right? I want our gateways to be beautiful. And that's not something I touched on earlier, but it's definitely, something that we're working on avidly. And kudos to Matt Stoller and our entryway committee team. Like, we're actively working on, like how do we make our entries into Lafayette beautiful? How do we, make it so that when you hit I-10 and maybe it's the Scott exit or maybe it's University, but like I'm in Lafayette, right? And so those are some of the fun things.
Yeah, I mean, because we all know you're from here. We know that we're all, Lafayette is who we are because of the people and the food and the culture, and it hasn't been because of our views.
Right.
Coming into town has not been the best thing, but we're seeing improvements. I mean, even just the Four Corners area. I mean, it's completely transformed in the last 5 years. You know, so like it's such a welcome view to see from a real estate standpoint, like bringing in people and really wanting people to embrace like not just our culture and our food, but like where we live and beautifying it and really trying to change some of the things that over the last 100 years with litter and trash and everything. I see that improving, and I've seen more improvement and more more things happening in the last 10 years than I've ever seen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We definitely have a new pace of government at LCG, and we are always, we want our front doors to be beautiful. We want people to want to take that exit and drive through, or we want you to remember, Lafayette, for being a great place and having cool things to do, but being beautiful at the same time.
Well, did I miss anything? Did there anything else you wanted to talk about?
I think that's good. We kind of touched it all.
Well, we really want to hear from you guys. We want to hear your comments. Please leave your comments. We'll try to get with Mary and have them all answered. And on behalf of everybody here in Lafayette, Mary, thank you so much for what you do. I mean, we are grateful to have somebody who's so dedicated and in love with Lafayette as much as we are. So
it's really fun.
Thank you so much.
I'm working for everybody. Thank y'all.